Welcome to MSP 1337. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, a show dedicated to cybersecurity challenges, solutions, a journey together, not alone. I'm joined this week by Josh Hohbein of CentrixIT. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be back.
And did I say your name right? I sometimes
You did.
don't.
No, you did.
Okay.
It's all right.
All right. Well, I feel pretty good about that then. So this is going to be an episode that maybe isn't as long as some, but it's not as short as others because, well, you and I both have a lot on our plate today, and we got to get this episode out. But next week is IT Nation Connect Global, and they're doing things, well, substantially different than I would say in years past. A lot of workshops and opportunities for education that is being delivered outside of the traditional ConnectWise speaker path. This year being largely driven by tech degenerates with some involvement from GTIA, but they're pulling in other communities to help make this a reality. And so the suggestions that have been made, I, of course, get excited about because one was like, hey, anything around the GTIA Cybersecurity Trustmark? I was like, cool. And then some of the other stuff that I think is where you started sort of this conversation was, man, we should really help MSPs understand more broadly frameworks in general and how to be successful in navigating both from a keep my own house in order and what are the things I should be doing with my clients. And man, we are seeing a lot of things happening right now in the industry, from SMB 1001 updates to NIS2. I actually saw some things last week at MSP Global that was quite interesting, where surprisingly, even in Europe, there are a lot of MSPs that don't realize that they are responsible or have obligations around GDPR or NIS2, and they're completely ignorant to those things. And I think this is maybe where we kick off with, you had some workshop sessions that were proposed and are happening next week. So lead it off, I think largely tied to maturities, if I recall.
Yeah, so we pretty much have like the entire pre-day is our community room, which is awesome. So definitely huge shout out to the tech degenerates, GTIA for allowing us to kind of lead the charge there for it. But I know there's a lot of other communities and people from different vendors, from other MSPs that are involved. So if I try to name some, I'm going to leave some out. But
That's right.
You know who you are. So thank you. But yeah, we were starting off like 8 a.m. to like 5 o'clock in the community.
I didn't sign up for that. I didn't sign up for that. I thought we started at 9.
Well,
oh,
you
man.
know, you're good. I am the lucky person who gets to be there, because I have the first one Wednesday morning about where we're just talking about what frameworks are and what the framework landscape is, and then we go over to Roddy Bergeron, who's kind of like he's over at SureWeb. He's cyber guy over there, and he's going to talk about how we can map frameworks to MSP operations. And then we're going to talk about just basically just all frameworks pretty much morning, and then conducting mini exercises. It's like a quick gap analysis, what that looks like, talking specifically about the Trustmark, what it is, and why MSPs need it, wrapping up things like that. We have lunch, and then we have, the whole afternoon is another session too. And that's kind of where you and I were working together on more of the specific things on the Trustmark. So we've laid the foundation in the morning over what are frameworks, why they're important, what you should be doing them, how you do them. And then we really talk about kind of understanding where the GTIA Trustmark fits in those framework conversations, and some practical applications over mapping those and building evidence. And lastly, kind of the whole thing is, now you have all of this information. You know all there is to know about frameworks. You know how to map to them, how to submit evidence, but then what, right? And that's You're creating your cyber maturity roadmap. So you've aligned and you have your next step. So pretty much you can come into this not knowing anything, or maybe if you do know some of the things, you're going to be able to figure out what framework that it makes sense for you to align to, and then how you can really build off of that for you and your clients.
For sure. So this has come up a lot, and you're very familiar with this, but I think we sometimes forget that maturity of an MSP or even maturity of the client, it's not something you just go out and get out a tape measure and go, yep, definitely mature, or the opposite of definitely not mature. And I think that there's an ebb and flow of current maturity state when we think about it from the perspective of cybersecurity, that just because you can show a good posture, the evidence to back it up, doesn't mean that your maturity stays intact, at least not all of the time. Like, it's difficult to stay on top of the threat landscape, and we're constantly trying to be mature or mature our organizations. But I think there's a lot of stumbling blocks out there. How do you overcome those hurdles, Josh?
I mean, the overcoming them is just again, I mean, line to the dang framework. I mean, you go through and it gives you the roadmap, it gives you the answers, and you kind of figure it out. You join different peer groups, you go to these workshops, you ask like, "Hey, we're going through this. How have you guys done it, or can anyone
Right.
provide me guidance on it?" You have resources. There's more than Google, but you could ask
Right.
AI. I mean, there's various different ways to do it.
Yeah, that's fair. I always find myself going, if I'm an MSP and I wasn't doing the trust mark, what would I use as a measuring stick to show that I'm at least following a path that has the reflection of being successful? And the more frameworks I look at, the less confidence I have that very many of them really care about the maturity of my organization. They care more about evidence, maybe not even in some cases evidence, but they're looking for more of a model that says, oh, you're addressing some of these core components around a particular type of data or a particular type of geography or type of business being served. They generally don't focus on the idea around how this protects the business that needs to meet the requirement. How do you help an MSP or even your clients? I think they kind of go hand in hand. Help them understand that this is a positive investment in the prevention of future failure.
So, I mean, really, it kind of comes to simplifying it, right? It's no different than you're taking your super technical, whatever you're saying. Oh, we need to guide this with 248-bit encryption, or we need this firewall that can do all of this fancy things, right? It just comes down to like the business risk alignment of it, and aligning how all of these controls will lower your business risk, will increase your maturity. So again, like, you can take the cyber insurance as an example. Like, hey, following this, doing these things, we get cyber insurance, so we're protected. Your business is protected. So just kind of again, you as the MSP or the technical consultant, I mean, you get to figure it out, and then it's your expertise to kind of simplify it or put it in business terms or layman's terms to the client as to why it's important to do. I mean, if they have a building, they have to follow fire code. Well, why do they have to follow fire code? A, it's the law. B, they don't want their business to burn down, right? Well,
Right. That's like, don't get on the elevator if it doesn't have an inspection date that was, say, within the reasonable amount of time. I don't know about
exactly.
you, but I don't like getting on an elevator where I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing the little certificate that says it's been inspected. And then even worse is when it says the certificate can be reviewed upon request. I'm like, I don't want to have to request it. I don't want to get on an elevator that I have to go back to the lobby. It's too late. I've already died.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
yeah, there's all those various things around it, and it's just like this is no different.
right. One of the things that I've always found to be quite interesting is this idea that businesses, whether they're the MSP or the client, they look at everything that they need to do through a lens that is technical focused. Ironically, you could be working with a flower shop that has no real comprehension of what a firewall does or doesn't do, or how a point of sale system works. But if you were to talk to them about risk completely lost. You talk to them about, hey, we don't want bad threat actors to get through to your point of sale and take away all your clients. They kind of have an understanding of that, right? Like, but the reality is, like, what's the prevention rate? Like, if you said, hey, we put this firewall in, we can guarantee that we're going to reduce credit card fraud by 3 transactions per month for $100 a month. They're gonna be like, okay, well, what about like getting like all of the transactions per month? Oh, well, that's going to be $500 a month. They're like, yeah, I'll go with the 3, right? But the reality is, how do they know the probability of how many? Because obviously that's not our job to know, is like how many transactions they do in a month, where they go from being running and that red line of borderline at a loss versus profitability in a given month. So how do you shift the conversation to get away from talking about the bits and bytes, the speeds and feeds from you need these technical things, and help them really dig into, this is your business. We can only protect it based on the understanding of risk that you have and that you are willing to share with us. Because the reality is, I have my own risk, so I'm going to worry about that. And right now, the fact that you don't understand, I'm hesitant to bring you in as a client, because based on what I've heard so far, you're going to increase my risk.
Like that, I mean, that's really it. How you approach it is you do talk about the risk. You lead with education and understanding, and it's much different than the fear, right? Like, you're not just going to tell them, oh, well, you're going to get breached if this is going to, like, I mean, to an extent that might be the case, but you're not going to get anything with that. You're gonna incite an emotional response, while their client's just gonna be like, well, F you, man, like, I don't need this, right? So working with them and figuring out, again, like, hey, what is their risk tolerance, right? Because if they are just a small flower shop who operates off of that, maybe they don't need the SIM or any of like the advanced controls that come with it. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of frameworks, is depending on which one you go with, there are different implementation groups. So it's like, okay, we pick off some of the lower ones, but there's still things that they and every business needs. Just some core essential things that they're going to need to prevent those risks from happening. And again, it goes back to looking at, it's much easier to tangibly think about the physical items, right? Like, do you have locks on your door and an alarm system? Yes. Okay, why? Well, we don't want people coming in after hours. And when they do, if someone does break in, we want an alert on it. Okay, cool. Well, in the cyber world, these doors can appear out of thin air, and there's hundreds of them, right? So we need to put locks on those doors. And if something happens to them, we want those alerts to come off, right? It's you kind of have to just figure out what works with the client, use whatever metaphors you want with them, but just get them to understand the risk and give them enough education to where they can make an educated business decision. It might not be the one that you want to hear, but at that point, they're at least educated enough. They at least have the information, and you can choose at that point whether to go forward with it or not.
Do you think that that's a shift that we're really seeing in the market today? I mean, we understand that frameworks do help create a reasonable baseline, right? Like, if I'm having a conversation with a client or an MSP about, well, hey, how does your organization from a security standpoint line up with CIS Top 18 or the Cybersecurity Trustmark, or fill in the blank? That's measurable, right? I can see whether or not you understand what the gaps are, whether or not you're doing the things that are inside there. Do you think that adds credibility when you're talking about it with prospective clients, or do you think they still struggle to understand how frameworks work or why frameworks matter?
I think it's going to depend on the client. So it depends. If they're in another service industry, or depending on their vertical, if they have their own regulations that they need to follow, or whatever certifications that they have, if you compare it to that, then they might be understanding. But I think the bottom line, though, is, as well as, like, your clients don't really care about the controls. They just want their stuff to work, and they just want their stuff to be secure. However, it does land some credibility to just go on and explain a little bit. Just, hey, we're not just making these things up, right? We're following a credited, trusted, like, source that is put together by people who know what they're doing, like governing body.
Sure.
We're at least following this rather than just doing this willy-nilly.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, right? Like, I think that, for so long, frameworks in general, particularly ones that are part of the regulated industries, they're deemed punitive, right? Like you have to do these things, and you hear this all the time, like, well, I can't afford that. It's like, well, to put this into perspective, I'll just use the example of Range Rover and Jaguar. I think they're now approaching, what is it, something in the billions of
Oh,
dollars of yeah.
yeah, it's huge.
Right. So if I'm the government and you're asking for help to like bail you out of this situation, okay, so I could see the first time this ever happens, government's like, hey, you're a big part of our, you know, GDP, gross domestic product, and helping us as an economy. Like, yeah, we got to do this, right? But if you're the sixth and the seventh and the 10th and the 20th time, whether it's you or another business have had these types of things happen, at some point, the government has to go, wait, how much money do we have left? Because we're spending an awful lot of money to, cover what costs and at what detriment to the rest of our to the rest of the businesses, right? Like if I was to share, like, hey, we have $1 billion, we're just going to go ahead and preemptively share all of this money with you. If you get hit, too bad. We prepaid. That's all. That's all we've got, right? And I think when you look at what's in a framework, even when they're not done to the level of security best practices, but more of a security initial baseline or a minimum threshold, you start to see that this is meant to protect the businesses. And in a lot of cases, it started from like, we can't keep paying for these things. So why should you end up in a situation where you have to pay for these things? And I think even to this day, for a lot of the smaller businesses, they still don't see that that is why they exist, and why an MSP who's helping a business particularly go through that process is not there to just make them spend more money, but help them understand where to spend the money to get the best ROI on what I would argue is an investment in the future success of your business, as opposed to, I'm just going to go with the insurance to help cover the cost for my future failures.
Well, and again, it just goes to that awareness and stuff like that too. Is even if you have the insurance, that doesn't mean you just get to put your hands up and say, "Oh, we got insurance, like they covered it." There's so much more that goes into those events. There's not even just the reputational damage where, I've heard the comeback to that, like, well, so what? Everyone's been breached. Like, why do I, it's not going to matter. People are going to forget about it. But, realizing that at the end of all of these security incidences are human emotions and human lives, and it sucks to go through one of those. It sucks for the people involved fighting it, and it sucks for the business and everyone involved. And there's all of that fear and uncertainty and just emotional damage that comes with it. And you don't want to go through one of those, right?
No.
And you don't want it to, you don't want to, uh, you don't want to have to go through one to find out that you don't want to go through one, is what I was trying to say. But
Right.
again, it just comes back to that education and awareness. They don't know what they don't know. And if you're trying to sell it as, well, you just need this tool, and you're approaching it from that technical mindset, then it's going to come off that you're just trying to sell them another tool or another solution or add MRR, right? It's just not how it's going to work.
For sure. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. We can, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but next week, I think if it's safe to say, a lot of what's going to happen in the pre-day there on Wednesday is largely tied to helping MSPs navigate both from a threat landscape standpoint and how to like really position yourself with the right defenses and proactively, set yourself up for success. At the same time, being able to see that this is also something that you can apply to how you work with your clients and prospective clients. The risks that you're taking on should not be burdens that you take on by yourself. The reality is you are not running your clients' businesses, they are. So if they don't have buy-in to it, you really have to ask yourself, is this a client that I want to work with? Any last thoughts, Josh, before I let you go, other than, hey, we hope to see everybody at IT Nation in Orlando starting on Wednesday,
Yeah.
8 a.m.
Absolutely, be there. You won't want to miss it. It's going to be great. The community aspect is you're going to learn a lot, even if this is something you're knowledgeable about. Come share your knowledge. The whole point of it being a community is it's community driven. So whatever questions that you have or any information you want to share, please come check this out. And as far as parting words to this podcast, if you're not aligning to a framework, just do it already. Just pick one. I don't care which one.
Do it already.
Just do it. I mean, I prefer the Trustmark, obviously, but come on, man, get on that.
Raise the bar. Be the differentiator.
Absolutely.
All right, Josh, appreciate it. For those of you listening, this has been an episode of MSP 1337. Thanks, and have a great week.